I just fall asleep.
All right. I'm here today with Chris Cahoon. He's a longtime three-continent friend from way back. We worked together in Japan, and we've connected multiple times in America and Europe. And I'm really excited to bring him on. He's a great conversationalist. In fact, at one point, I said, hey, we're thinking of doing this thing in Thailand. You should come out. You're a great conversationalist. But the thing never happened, and Chris never came. So Chris is... he's an adventurer, an artist, a climber, a teacher, and right now he's out at the Monterey Museum of Art in Monterey, California, and we actually got to connect about a year and a half ago out there. And so, Chris, welcome to the BAM School podcast.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, it's been anything but a straight line to where I am, that's for sure. So I grew up in the cornfields of central Illinois and joined the Air Force out of high school because that's just what you do, is serve God and country, and figured I'd make that a 30-year career, but quickly got involved in youth ministry as a volunteer at my first base and thought, I love the Air Force, but I love this even more, and it's a lot more meaningful than what I'm doing. So finished out 4 more years of enlistment, went to Bible college, and then into youth ministry, where I eventually met you. And just during that time, felt God calling me to the art world. It was one of those where I was just complaining to God in prayer about how dark and godless the art world was, and he should send somebody to do something about that. And he agreed. So I actually kind of, at the time, begrudgingly left for art school, and with a gentle nudging out of the nest from a great boss that I had at the time. And went to art school and have been kind of on that track ever since in different ways. A lot of that has been just consulting, helping people build creative education programs, whether centered around art or, I even did a sustainable community gardening discipleship program for a church for college students, and in Nepal put together, kind of reorganized a social enterprise for orphans around jewelry making to make it sustainable over 3 months, and then came back and through just a God divine appointment. Somebody said, hey, you should go to the Rhode Island School of Design, where I went, and which is a tier 1 school. They're always neck and neck with Yale, vying for first place kind of as art schools. And so I said, well, thanks for the compliment. But so actually applied, and it was probably the quickest, sloppiest application I ever wrote, and just said, well, God, if you want me in, I'll get in. And lo and behold, they called me back in a couple of days and said, hey, we love you and we have money for you. So got my master's in art and design education there in 2016, and looked for a job for a while after that, flipping burgers for about a year to make ends meet, and found this job out here and moved out. And so I've been here for just over 3 years now.
Cool. So you've had a lot of different places, different jobs. Mm-hmm. What have been some of your favorite adventures along the way?
Oh, man, there are many, many. So I always tell people, if I died today, I've had a rich life. The Lord has blessed me with lots of adventures, and say that He's made me for 2 things, and that's to be creative and to adventure.
Oh, cool.
And so, just being able to travel different places. Okinawa is second home, just living there with you and the Rathmells and the Hutchings and just the whole crew there was always amazing. Probably although one that stands out is the trip to Nepal, where the director called me, which is a bit of a miracle in itself with that story, but called and said, hey, I need somebody in Nepal to kind of reshape this program and make sure it's sustainable. Can you go? And I was like, yes, but let me pray about it. And I think within 3 weeks I was on the ground in Kathmandu, and just such an amazing, rich time of seeing God's hand time and time and time again. I got to be the first Westerner to ever stay in a village in the Himalayas foothills where one of my students was from. And
Cool.
And just hear how even in Nepal, where Christianity isn't necessarily overtly illegal, but much of it is legislated out of practice. Then there's just this amazing valley where the gospel's been thriving for 150 years, as far as they can tell. And great Christian community in this valley. So,
Really cool.
so yeah, just an amazing time.
That's neat. I hope to make it to Nepal. Hopefully this fall, if COVID recedes according to my plans.
Yeah.
So, is there a quote that kind of inspires you as you live life?
I mean, there are many quotes, and certainly a lot of scripture that about running the race, and with Romans 12 and Hebrews 12 and others. But kind of one of the quotes I was thinking of is Jim Elliot, who says, "He is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain that which he cannot lose." So, I just see one of the tragedies of living longer is seeing people walk away from the Lord or pursue other things, and forsaking the Lord for those. And I just think, what good is it for a man to gain the whole world yet forfeit his soul? It's probably one of the great tragedies in life. And so Jim Elliot, I think, has the positive way of spinning that.
Yeah, that's great. I love that quote as well. So tell us a little bit about being missional in the art world. How does that play out? What is your experience?
That's a long topic. It's interesting. It's and actually I'm kind of at a crossroads career-wise, still with the goal of ministering to the art world, but I'm just saying that it's easier to minister outside of the institutions rather than from the inside in a lot of ways, and that's been a huge tension the last few years working in the museum is when is it wise to stay quiet, and when is it cowardly to stay quiet, and when is it when should I speak up, and when is it not wise to speak up has been a really interesting conundrum to ponder. And so it's interesting. I would say by and large, the circles that I'm in within the art world, I would label them as religiously Marxist. And so that is very much the dominant worldview. Sprinkled. It's California, so it's sprinkled with a lot of New Age thought as well. But have had a number of conversations on why capitalists can't be artists, can't be true artists, because they don't think critically about anything, So how could conservatives or capitalists be true artists? Just how that conception of conservatism and Christianity kind of bleed together in the minds of those that I'm around. So it's been interesting. It is a much different culture than where I grew up, even, where we worked within the military and youth ministry overseas and those things. And it's a bit like, I never had culture shock going overseas. Culture shock would only set in when I'd come back home. Because you have these expectations of what home is, and you realize it's changed as you've been gone. and you've changed as you've been gone, and those things amplify one another. And so, I work mostly with Americans in the art world, and so you kind of have this, I get you, but you just realize there's this vast difference in culture and worldview. But there's some amazing conversations too, and artists by and large have amazing hearts, and they just want to love people well, and do good in the world, but through a much different lens. Sure.
Yeah. It's interesting how just about everyone, I think, would say, yeah, I want to do good with my life. Mm-hmm. Like, I want to make a difference. I want to make an impact. Everyone loves the videos of the postman, like, shoveling the walk, or, celebrating the guy delivering the packages during COVID, or paying for, bringing the military person home with their kids. Like, all these things, like, we love all these little things. And yet so much of what we see is just hate and vitriol and judgment. And, it's interesting the place that we're at in the world right now. Like, if you get to know almost any person on an individual basis, you're like, okay, I mean, there's a few people in the world that we probably wouldn't like, or our personalities clash or whatever. But whatever forces are at play with social media and judgment and cancel culture, it's like it's really the opposite of how most people one-on-one would say they want to live.
Yeah. Well, and it's a lot of it too just comes down to the definition of what is good and who gets to define that. And so you have cancel culture saying we get to define good, and since we think our view is good and your view is bad, then we have an obligation to shut you down. Whereas for us, we're saying goodness comes from outside of ourselves, and is transcendent. So that's a big piece of the conversation that we just don't get to.
Right. I'm hoping that 2021 sees the cancellation of cancel culture. That's my hope for the year to come.
Yeah.
So how do you sustain your joy, hope, and peace in an environment where, you have this value tension every day that you step into work, and yet you have a calling to make a difference in that environment? So how do you personally sustain yourself?
It's honestly, at times it's rough. And I would say, there are times that just aren't fun for long stretches. And I would say that I'm not happy, but I think joy is the longer piece, and there still is joy there. And it is keeping an eye on eternal things, keeping an eye on the long game. And even in the midst of COVID, or in the midst of political upheaval and cancel culture and all these things, like, I can trust that God is sovereign. He's got it, so worrying about it or being upset about it's not going to do much for me, so so just that hope in Christ for sure, and then just staying active in Scripture. And the one thing that I learned the hard way in art school, I worked a job where I wasn't able to go to church most Sundays for about a year, and it just killed me. And so that just really taught me, it's like, I won't have a job that I can't attend church. I need that community. I need that fellowship, to lift me up, as kind of a respite in my week. Yeah. So that's been huge.
Yeah. I had a great learning experience with that. We had a boss when we were in Japan who I'm not sure was actually a follower of Christ, but he was a chaplain. And so I started about once a month being like, the kids were little. I started being like, once a month, let's just take, Sunday morning off, not go to church. And we probably did that 3, maybe 4 times, 3 or 4 months in a row. And then I was like, you know what, this, like, I'm not there just to hear from this guy. I'm here for the community and the other things that are there, and whether or not he was actually saying good things. I don't think that he actually believed him. But we just decided, you know what, this is not a good habit. Like, we're not going to take a Sunday off a month. And I remember just being super blessed, like every week that I would go, and it would be like, you know, it's kind of like Paul's phrase of whether false motives are true, the gospel is preached. And I don't know what his motives were, but I know that when we would go, I would be blessed from hearing the word, from the community, from experiencing the worship. And that was just a great lesson for me that community sustains you no matter what, you know, you're going through. And we've had some hard times. Like in Thailand, I remember 5 months in saying to my wife, this country is killing me, and the things that we're involved in. And we had like just landed. And it's been our house church community and the friends, you know, when things have been difficult that have that are here that have really encouraged and sustained as we've just sought to be faithful in this environment.
Yeah.
So cool. Thanks for sharing those things.
Yeah, absolutely.
So 2 days ago, I learned about NFT, and the first thing I did after spending about 45 minutes just researching and reading was message you and say, Chris, do you know enough about NFT to get on a podcast? And I thought it'd be a fun opportunity to connect and for me to learn about NFT and help our listeners to learn about it. And it's amazing to me how quickly things change, opportunities that are there for people to jump on them. And this intersection, NFT is, in my mind at least, is really an intersection about art and business and some way, you know, there's some things in it that seem like really great for artists. Then there's other people that are like, oh no, this is better for the investors. And, you know, there's all of that kind of thing. But I thought it'd be, just fascinating to learn from you what is NFT? What is it about? Where is it coming? And real quick, before we dive into NFT, have you ever seen the documentary Enter Through the Gift Shop?
Yep.
I think it's
for sure.
2011. Maybe Banksy, maybe not Banksy, who knows? But it was for me. If I'll put it in the show notes. If you've never seen it, it's a fascinating. It's just fascinating on so many different levels, like business, the art world, culture, people, how art, is created, and all of those kind of things. Any reflections real quick on Enter Through the Gift Shop before we dive into NFT?
Oh, actually, today there was a tweet that went out. I was listening to a art and NFT clubhouse room for a little bit on my lunch break, and somebody said, "Guys, my friends just tweeted me and said they're minting an NFT." They're ultra rich and don't care about money, and they're burning a Banksy like live, and they're going to mint it. So it's an interesting, nice little seg between the two. But yeah.
So did they do that?
I don't know. I didn't see it. I was getting back to work, but we'll see. I'm sure there'll be more chatter about it if it happened. So
since Banksy destroys his own stuff,
right,
he's probably he's probably down with that.
Yeah. So Enter Through the Gift Shop is an interesting one, and it was made by Banksy, but whether it was actual documentary or just totally made up, kind of is an interesting question, and it does capture a lot of the hype and the absurdity that goes with the art world and the market and the influence and different institutions. So, it's a great flick to watch.
Yeah. We do this week-long businesses mission training every year, and people's brains are hurting like halfway through. And so in the middle of the week, I usually say, hey, if anyone wants to come, I'll bring the drinks and popcorn, and we're going to watch a movie. And it's fun because there's so many lessons, but it's just a fun, it's fun. experience as well.
Yeah.
So, all right. So learn us, O sage, wise one, on all things NFT.
Well, what's the saying about you only have to know one more thing than your pupil? It's
Yes.
about where I'm coming from with this. So you're 2 days in. I'm about a week into NFTs,
Yeah.
but have certainly been marinating in it through this week because I think there's some amazing possibilities, and it's very speculative at this point because the market is so new, and so but NFT.
So let's I don't know if you're about to tell for people that have never heard of an NFT. Tell them what it is.
So it's called a non-fungible token, and it's has to do with cryptocurrency and blockchain technology, and basically you're creating a digital token of ownership, and that could be a token of ownership over a physical item, or what it's most popular with right now is with digital art. And so before, it was hard to sell digital art unless it was a subscription, or you sell directly to a company for an ad or something, because it's so easy to replicate. There's no way of knowing, if you have a Picasso, you can tell by the way it's painted and the age and the signature and these things that you have an original Picasso. It's hard to duplicate. But with digital media, all you have to do is right click and hit copy and paste, and you can legally or illegally own that piece of artwork. And so it just wasn't saleable in a market-driven sense. And so what this does is you can now take the link for that piece, or sometimes if it's a small enough file, you can actually take the file and embed it into an encrypted code that can't be duplicated, and essentially have proof that it's yours. And within that space, so kind of the most common cryptocurrency being used at the moment is Ethereum. And so within your Ethereum wallet, where you keep your tokens and keep your money, then if you go to sell that token, it can be tracked through the blockchain. And so, as soon as you sell it and somebody else has the rights to it, then there's a ledger for provenance going back to saying, yes, this person owns it, this other person owned it before, and before them was the original minter, so likely the artist that minted it. And so, it just allows you to track it. The great news for artists is that you can do smart contracts with it. And so right now, typically, if I were to sell the painting on the wall behind me, then I could sell it, we'll say, for 20 grand. In my dreams, I could sell it for 20 grand. And if there are any buyers out there, just DM me. And so I would sell it for 20 grand, and then that person could turn around and sell it 5 minutes later, flip it for 80 grand, perhaps, or down the road, and any sale after that, the artist gets squat. And so really it's the gallerists and the collectors down the road, the investors, who make all the money off of my creative work. And so the starving artist continues to starve. And so with the smart contracts, the artist can mint into, and minting is just the forming that contract. And the non-fungibility side means that it can't be exchanged, and it's immutable, so it can't be changed. That contract can't be changed. And so you can essentially put in there, if you buy this work of art, every subsequent purchase, I get 10 or 20% royalties. And so I can continue making a piece of the pie for my ideas. So that's probably the biggest reason it's blowing up within the art world, is being able to finally sell digital, as well as have those smart contracts. And there are actually some really amazing creative ways that people are coming up with new ideas. Songs are kind of the same way. People are selling experiences. So the NBA is getting in with is it NBA Top Game, something along those lines. Top Shot, where LeBron will make a 3-pointer and they'll sell it, and you can own that moment, and people will do something. It's kind of like trading cards in a way, only you'll get the video or whatever, and potentially the rights to those. And I've heard people say, I'm selling whatever moment, and I'm linking to all of the tweets that come in and the reactions that come in. So like say LeBron again, you not only get the link to the video, but you get all the tweets of everybody reacting to that shot, that you own as a collector.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't get it because they're like, I can just watch that, on
Right.
YouTube. But it's, collectors collect. So.
Right. It's fascinating to me, that you can own a 13-second dunk, and actually it's more like 3 seconds, but they have, the before, the after, and they're spinning it in a cube or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And like Beebley's, I think he just had a large sell.
That's what really helped blow up to mainstream media is Christie's just sold Beeble's piece for $6.6 million.
Wow.
And so, it's kind of one of the main institutions putting their stamp of approval on digital art finally.
Yeah.
And so then all the other collectors are now starting to say, oh, should I get in on this? So there were already quite a few collectors, but more just digitally oriented, more actually real crypto collectors, people that are just really interested in crypto, billionaires and CEOs and such that are interested in the movement. And it's interesting because it's a lot about, of course, building that market. So, their collection's worth more, but also kind of building up those artists and the scene in general, rather than just flipping things or whatever. There's a lot of interesting altruism in the movement. So.
Yeah. So have you thought about jumping in the last week? Is there a way that you would get into digital art?
I actually have. I'm trying to, at the same time, build my consulting business suddenly. And so it's vying for my attention. But it's interesting for me because most of my artwork deals with entropy, and I tell people that I make things that fall apart. I'm just kind of starting the conversation with artists about, it's essentially Ecclesiastes, life and death. All things are vanity, and we're going to die. Your artwork at some point is going to die. Even your crypto art, is going to be made redundant down the line sometime when the technology is no longer keeping up. And so what does that mean about life and life after? And so I make things like the painting behind me is made out of a super sticky double adhesive tape. And so it's collecting lint and detritus and dust and stuff in the air. And one day it'll be done. Or I'll show you this other piece real quick on my other wall. So these are canvases that I actually planted in the garden with vegetables. And let them grow up through it. And then over the next couple of years, the canvas has just kind of rotted away. And so it sparked some great conversations and gospel-centered conversations, but it sparked zero sales. So it's hard to sell.
We'll post a link in the show notes to your.
There you go. Yeah.
What do you call the rotting canvas?
That one I think was called Square Roots, each series kind of has a different name. There's Documentropy was a series, and so it takes on different forms, but because it's falling apart, then it's not likely to sell. And so, with crypto art, then I could actually take the images and even, again, sell a moment within the life of that work, and do a collection of kind of beginning to end through the process of planting the piece in the garden to where it is today, to its final demise. And people could own a piece of that work. So, and it's
really cool.
Yeah. So I've thought about it. I'm way behind on the technology side and learning the ins and outs of minting as well. And it'll be interesting to see. I heard somebody talk the other day, I think is probably pretty spot on, that, when Bitcoin came out and cryptocurrency first came out, it just blew up. And then it died, and everybody thought it was gone, and then it slowly continued to rise. And so I think it'll probably be a similar gold rush, and it'll hit the bubble, and then once it's mainstreamed a little more, I think the market will really start to take off. So I don't know that it'll get on the first wave necessarily, but I'll probably, in the next few months, see if I can't mint something, even just as an experiment or something new and creative to learn. So.
Yeah, if you do, let us know, and we'll update that in the show notes
for sure.
as well. It's I said to my wife years ago, I was telling her about Bitcoin, and I said, yeah, there's this thing called Bitcoin. I said I was thinking about getting some when it was $8, but now it's $80, so it's just way too expensive. Because I was thinking in my mind, kind of like a stock equivalency, and I have lamented a time or two that $80 would have been a good, and probably in 5 years I'll be going, yeah, Chris and I were talking when Bitcoin was 48,000, and it just seemed ridiculous. So now it's 3 billion.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah, I think Ethereum is around 1,500 right now for one ETH, and there's talk of one or two new ones kind of coming out that will serve new purposes and open up new ways of using cryptocurrency for NFTs. So that could actually be an interesting thing to look at for, if that's opening up new functions and new markets, then. You may not get the Bitcoin rush, but might be worth investing.
Yeah.
So,
do you have any other prognostications on the future of NFT and art?
I mean, it's just going to continue expanding. I love hearing naysayers. There's probably the most prominent art critic in the U.S. Somebody the other day said he said, "Oh, that's just for a bunch of old white Republican men," which, if you look at the people that are putting it up, is not the case. But it's kind of the typical. Anytime something new comes out, even in the art world, people poo-poo it and say that's not art, and try to hold on to their little slice of the kingdom. And I mean, it's. I think they're brilliant ways of expanding art through NFTs. So, and you even see some of the really high-end fashion houses and labels are starting to mint NFTs to go with their apparel.
Cool.
And there's a lot of digital apparel now really starting to crop up, and you have all of the virtual worlds, that are people can sell virtual real estate or virtual items or even virtual fashions, even for gaming systems. So it's hard to say where it'll go because it's a bunch of creative people that are creating new things.
Yeah. So as we wrap up, what are some of the dreams that you're still chasing? What are some of the things that you'd like to see in your life?
Selling a piece of artwork I think I designed a tattoo for a kid in 6th grade, and he paid me $1, and that's actually the last money I've ever made off of a piece of artwork. So, no, I would love, especially with the art ministry piece, the dream down the road is to start an artist in residence program and let artists come to me for months at a time. And even beyond that, to start a kind of an alternative school, which I think you know a thing or two about that. But just kind of there's some really amazing avant-garde artists that are believers and just aren't able to really advertise that. And so I'd love to get just the top of the top to do maybe even a few months at a time, and just invite whomever to come out and attend the school and just share truth in that medium. So kind of a Schaefer Labrie model. And then there was an art school called Black Mountain College back in the 60s, where Buckminster Fuller and a lot of people were on faculty. The Bauhaus instructors all kind of gravitated there. And it was just kind of come as you want and stay as long as you want, but contribute. You know, if you're here as a student, then you're expected to teach as well, and as kind of a collective. But it fundamentally reshaped contemporary art in both America and the world just over those few years. Yeah. And so I'd love to do that on more of a kingdom level.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love hearing about the dreams in people's hearts, and you know, they don't always come to fulfillment this side of eternity, but many times they do, or pieces of those we start to see. And I have started a couple schools, but I'm really excited about, you know, next level, like having kind of my own campus. And one of the things, like some of the places I've looked at, one of the things I've thought is, man, we're not going to be able to fill this space up. So maybe we'll work together again someday. And,
there you go.
We'll be campus mates somewhere.
Yeah, for sure. Would love it, man.
Yeah. Cool. Well, how can if people want to get a hold of you, or if they want to buy Square Root, what's the best way for people to contact you?
Oh, yeah, that's part of what I'm building at the moment, taking up my time. But for now, honestly, I'll just they say never give out your email account, but I can do that. You know, I'm on Facebook, Chris Cahoon. Trying to think what the best. Instagram is just Chris Cahoon, all one word, COHOON, or chris.cahoon@gmail.
All right. We'll link to those as well.
All right.
Well, thanks so much, Chris. Really fun.
Yeah.
Thanks for the quick entry into NFT and
Absolutely.
helping me to learn a little bit about that. And till next time, listeners, be adventurous, and we'll see you again on the BAM School podcast. So it'll